So, welcome everyone to the Basic Science Podcast, where we freely discuss about science, research, and academia. And today we have the lovely Unain with us. So, hello, Unain.
Hey,
How are you doing today?
I'm doing good.
Good, good. So, what brought you here today to the podcast?
You told me that. You were the one who asked me if we could have a conversation, and I was down for.
Very cool,
Yeah.
very cool. So, can you tell us more about yourself, Unain?
So I guess I can start with how I know you
Mm-hmm.
because we work at the same place,
Sounds
and
good.
so I came here for we're in the same program where we started a PhD, and I think that's the other thing, right? We're in the same cohort. We started at the same time. So
Mhm.
I'm doing my PhD at the same institute as you, where we study cancer. And then I think before this, I was back in India where I did my bachelor and master's in biotechnology. And yeah, that's
Oh,
a little background on me.
nice. So, what pushed you to go through into science? Like, is it like something a subject you really were having chemistry with? No pun intended.
So chemistry, I don't know. I think for biology, I always had a love for biology. And I mean, I'm going to be honest, it was never that like research was my calling. I think, uh, how when you grow up, the typical professions that you're supposed to follow. I was supposed to go into med school like any other.
Like everyone,
Exactly,
everyone.
exactly. Like any other person that you know out there. But as you can see, that didn't pan out that well. But I'm actually glad that I stumbled upon to research because it was nice to discover the actual way where the research that's applied into the medical field, where it's coming from, right? We're kind of like behind the scene person
Yeah.
of trying to figure out that knowledge. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah,
Nice, nice.
yeah.
So how I'm curious, like how is education in India? Like, what are the major, steps?
So yeah, like I said, there are certain professions, which at
Hmm.
least like back when I was growing up, I feel like definitely things are changing a bit now.
Hmm.
But yeah, either you would go into med school or engineering school. Those were like your two main options. So depending on that, like when you're doing your training up until like high school, like how you have CJAP here, I think high school for us was like the main training program where we had to really buck up and try to decide basically which field you wanted to go into. And then after that is a part where we have like these entrance exams.
Hmm.
So they're like really intensive exams that you have to compete against. Not usually just your cohort that you've been studying it, it's actually like all over India.
Okay.
So it's super intensive, super stressful. And yeah, that kind of helps you figure out based on when you do the exam which field you want to go to. And then just
Mm.
because it's you're competing with everybody, like I said, it's super competitive.
Mm.
So if you don't do that well, your chances like go down. Yeah.
I see. So it's interesting. I think we had that discussion, the same discussion with Roger in his episode.
Yeah.
I think in Spain, it's the same where I guess the grade will decide which career
Exactly.
you
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
go in.
Yeah. And
Okay.
also like depending on which field you want to go into, you might have different tiers of schools too. So based on how you place, you could
Mm.
get placed into that. Like you had the option. But if you don't do that so well, then you don't have a lot of options,
Yeah,
it
I
just
see.
sticks to you. Yeah.
Very cool. And so, how was your? How did you decide that you wanted to go into research? I'm curious.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, I kind of stumbled upon into it. Uh,
Mm.
so my plan was like every other person to get into med school. Uh, so like I said, I was talking about the entrance exams up until like high school.
Mm.
We had I did pretty well. There are like a bunch of different exams. So I
Mm.
did pretty well on some of them, but then the one that kind of places you where you want to go, I kind of thanked that one just because
Mm.
a lot of things were going on and it gets super stressful. Uh, And also the reason for me for tanking that was not that I was not good in biology. It's just that I don't do really well with like physics and chemistry. That's never
Mhm.
been
I
my
see.
strong point. So I didn't do that so well in that. And
Hmm.
that really kind of got my score down.
Yeah.
So my plan was okay, I'm gonna give it another go, take a gap year,
Hmm.
prepare and do it again. But at the same time, I didn't want to just like waste my whole year. So as a backup,
Hmm.
I kind of enrolled myself into an undergrad program, and this program was kind of new when I was getting into school. It was a bachelor's in biotechnology. And when I looked at the syllabus, it was kind of like a good amalgamation of all of the things that I liked, like,
Nice.
genetics and more of biology, more of information technology and stuff like that.
Hmm.
So I went for a few classes, I attended a few of the lectures, and then slowly I kind of ended up realizing that wait a minute, like maybe I don't want to do med school. Like I kind of like what I'm learning right now, and I just stuck through it. And then, like, the more I got into biology and learning about biology, I figured out the alternative path of like research.
Mm.
So then I just followed the steps. I did a master's, and then okay, I was like, okay, I think I can do research as a career, and I ended up doing a PhD.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So, where did you do your masters? Where was it?
So I'm from Mumbai. I did
Mhm.
it from University of Mumbai, both my
Okay,
undergrad and my masters. Yeah.
nice. And did you had an internship before you decided going into your masters, or was it just?
So, I did have an internship, but it was more of like a component of my master's program. So it
Hmm.
was like we needed to do a 6 month dissertation to write like a project, which was like a thesis.
Hmm.
So it was part of the program, and that was kind of my foray into actual practical research. Like I learned about research a lot in theory and conceptually. But my first practice was, yeah, the dissertation experience that I did. I did it at it's an institute called National Institute of Research and Reproductive Health in my city. It's one of the pretty good institutes. At that time, the internship that I got was in a lab that was looking at osteoporosis in women, which also seemed like a really cool. Uh, to me at that point, just like doing science, everything seemed cool. So, yeah, it was a nice opportunity. Yeah,
Okay, very cool.
yeah.
And so, the how did you decided you will go to Canada for your doctorate? Because.
I feel like, yeah, when you ask me like all my career path questions, I feel like
Mhm.
whatever I always usually end up planning out don't pan out. And then, like, it's always like the backup options that end up working for me.
Mhm.
So once I decided that I really wanted to do a PhD, I actually, after I graduated my master's, I had like another gap year where I was preparing uh, for graduate school in US. So I applied to a bunch of actual schools and programs to
Okay.
for a PhD in US. Uh, while I was doing that, I also was like, okay, let's try to figure out what I want to do.
Mhm.
And I had a senior who was at our institute who got into the program. And I just reached out to her for like information. And she told me, oh, it's a pretty cool program. And I think that's the cool thing about IRIC, right? They do the recruitment event. And I found out about the recruitment event.
Mm.
At that point, I had like all my application and all my stuff ready. So I was like, okay, I can also send it out to this additional place.
Yeah.
So while I was doing that, I was doing a bunch of interview rounds with schools in US, but unfortunately, they didn't end up panning out.
Mhm.
And then I, like, at that point, I think I was like at my lowest self-esteem level where I was like, okay, maybe this is not meant for me. I'm not cut out for this. But then, like, I got the acceptance for the recruitment event to come visit the labs and like interview with people,
Mhm.
which was still like a big gamble for me because it's not like an actual offer, right? You're just getting an offer to come visit. And at that point in my life where my self esteem was already pretty low, I was like, okay, do I do this? Do I not? Is it going to work out? But I spoke to a few people and they were like, no, if you got the offer to visit, like there's a good chance that you can get in.
Mhm.
So I did the recruitment event and like now I'm here.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's a great story, you know. You speak a lot about self-esteem. I was curious to have your opinion on that, since with the PhD,
Oh yeah.
path, it's so difficult
I,
and long. And so,
yeah.
what's your opinion and
Um, I'm
your
very,
message
I'm
about science?
very familiar with imposter syndrome.
Mm,
I struggle with it a lot. I think, like any other graduate student out there, it's such a big part of our life, right? Because I feel like
right.
research, even though it's so collaborative, often it is also very lonely because you're always struggling on your project on your own. You're always trying to figure out, troubleshoot.
Mm,
And I think at the end of the day, it also gets down to personality. I think for me, it was like I'm learning now, I'm getting better at it, but it was always difficult for me to ask for help.
mm,
And that really ends up, like, affecting, because if things don't work out, I think we pin our self value to that. And I'm trying to dissociate my self value to my work
mm.
to kind of help with my imposter syndrome. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a good point. I don't know if it's just maybe in the lab I am in, or it might be just like an intrinsic thing to academia, where you mentioned that we need to troubleshoot, and it's like a learning curve. We do everything from scratch, but sometimes we take over a project of someone, so this person already have built knowledge,
Exactly.
but most of the time this person has already left, so it's like you have to repeat
Yeah.
the process again. So
Yeah, and because you don't, like I said, right, you kind of are alone because you don't have enough information, maybe, or you don't have. Also, I think what we forget most often is that, yeah, the person before you who did it, they probably had a learning curve too, right? And that's how
mhm.
they got there. But when we see them at their highest. So
Yes.
we don't really see like the whole sausage in making. So we just assume, okay, that's the level we have to get to,
Hmm.
but we're like starting at the base level and we're gonna have a few falls to get there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I agree.
So how was your experience here in Canada, if you compare the culture to India, and like what you'd like, what you didn't like here?
It's I actually really like it because no, I mean it depends, right? Like, of course, I definitely miss home too,
Yeah,
but
for sure.
it was a good experience. I was in the phase of my life where I really wanted to experience all these things on my own, try to figure out how it works. Uh, Montreal is a pretty good city, I think. But again, like going back, I think my first, like, there's always that year of transition, right? Where you're trying to learn and figure out the new city, but then you're also in the super intensive PhD program. So, like, you have to figure out that balance in trying to fit in.
Hmm.
You're fitting in not only at work, but you're also fitting in like in your life that you want to create, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you say that if you came here uh, only speaking Hindi and nothing else like English or French, would you still be able to live in Montreal? Like, I think it's a
Uh,
reality here in Montreal. Like, I know people, for example, I'm Arabic,
yeah.
so I know people that only speak Arabic that are able to manage in the city.
I think, uh, yeah, I think it would also depend on the language. I think Arabic would work because there is a pretty good uh, diversity of people here where it is very, you could figure things out. With Hindi too, I think there are a lot of Indians here, but then at the same time, uh, yeah, I don't know if that would work out, how well that would work out.
Mm.
But then going back to your question, I feel like more and more, at least the past few years, everybody in India like pretty much speaks English, like because most of our schooling medium
Yeah.
primarily has been English for a
Oh,
while.
that's
So
cool.
like we taught like science and maths and everything in
Mhm.
English. So I feel like that was a good transition, but the French definitely was a struggle, right?
Mhm.
Especially in my first year. Yeah.
Mm.
But it's fun. It's not that bad. I feel like Montreal still is a pretty nice city. A lot of diverse people. You get to see so many cultures. You get to experience so many different human experiences.
Yeah.
So it's nice.
Yeah. And what does Unain have as hobby outside of science? Like,
Ah.
I know you have a few things.
No, that's a myth, right? Do we have stuff? Do we have
Oh,
time outside of
you
science?
have the time.
No, I was joking. I think so. I always had inclination for the arts, but I think again my imposter syndrome just like is everywhere, right? So I never thought I was good enough to do that, and I still don't think I'm good enough to do that. But the pandemic actually allowed me to like kind of figure out and use arts and craft as more of a tool for like managing my anxiety. uh, because I think at least if you're in science, there is a part of you, like irrespective of like what your personality is, that likes the control and organization of science, right? Because science is so rational. You can plan everything out, you can control exactly your experiments how you want them to be. And I feel like that's where a lot of us struggle, is when things don't work out, we don't know what's working out, right?
Yeah.
And with the pandemic, I think that was such a big struggle trying to figure out how we're going to do science with when everything is going wrong. So that's when I turned to like arts and craft, and I picked up a few different hobbies. I think like one of them was crocheting. I think I made a lot of different projects that I ended up giving a lot of friends, and I'm more into like doodling and painting. Painting helps a lot too.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. Do you think? I know also you have plants. Do you consider this as a hobby? Like growing plants.
Oh yeah. Like I think I got into plants even in I think everybody got into plants in the pandemic.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I consider that as a hobby. Yeah, and I think I've come to realize that it's also kind of like a chore, because they also like my plants at any stage of my being. If you visit them, I think they represent my mental health. If they're not doing well, it's probably because my mental health is not doing well. Yeah.
Speaking of mental health, how was it for you, like dealing with the PhD? Like we spoke about the imposter syndrome, but you mentioned anxiety. How do you manage with all of this? Like, is it something that you try to find like an inner peace within you, or do you reach out to someone to, sometimes?
So I think it's a mix of both. Again, going back to personalities, I think that has always been a struggle with me, where I have had difficulty asking for help because I don't want to be a burden on anybody else, but I'm working on that. And I think like you said, the other part that's super important too that I learned early on is trying to build a community, because since I came here on my own, I don't have any family here, right? So it was my job to kind of build my family.
Yeah.
And I was really lucky, and I found a few good friends that have stuck around that are also going through the same thing. So I don't know if it's trauma bonding or if it's, because we're going through the same thing. But it's been really nice to have the support of the friends, and trying, like, we're there for each other when somebody's going through a tough time.
Yeah.
Somebody else can pick up the slack, right? And then at the same time, yeah, like dealing with my anxiety and my imposter syndrome, I still feel like it's a struggle sometimes. It's a process that I'm working on. I have good days, I have bad days, depending on, how your science is going.
Exactly.
But I think definitely from 5 years ago when I started the program, I have learned a lot. I've learned a lot about how I am as a person and how I deal as a person, right? So I figured out how I can make peace with things that are not under my control. This is the amount, like, I've learned to pick my battles. Let's say that. Yeah.
That's cool. And speaking about friends, do you think we are able to make friends outside of our,
Yeah.
workplace?
I don't know. I think it's really difficult.
I find
At
it
least for
difficult.
me.
Yeah, me.
I feel for me. But you know what? Like, I used to think that too, that, okay, like, most of my friends are who we see at work, right? Like, but if you're gonna think about any other field, right? Like, your friends come from places that you work at. So this is what you think. We work at our place, right? And the only thing is, our workplace is also the place where we study at. That's where a human's friends mostly come from, like either your school life or when you get to work. It's just that we're consistently in school the whole time.
Yeah.
So it's definitely difficult making friends outside of our workplace, but I think I've come to peace with that, and I've come to terms with that. I'm really happy for the friends that I have. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, And so, how is it for you the so far the process of the PhD? Where are you at which stage? Did you have regrets or doubts going into a PhD?
So right now I'm more closer towards the end. I think I'm in my fifth year. I started in 2018, so yeah, I'm
Mm-hmm.
closer towards the end. I would say going in, I was definitely more naive,
Mm-hmm.
like I guess every other person is, and I had more aspirations and more faith, I guess,
Yeah.
in how things would work out.
Mm-hmm.
And not that I'm saying I'm like I've lost faith, but it's more like I think I've gotten a better perspective of how things work, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm like I said, I'm closer to finishing. Um, what was your question?
Did you have doubts throughout the
Oh yeah,
your journey as a PhD? I remember I had this one moment of blank, like do I really want to do this? And then
yeah,
after that it passed, and I was like, yeah.
yeah. No, I feel like for the commitment that it is, like it is a pretty long commitment than
Mm-hmm.
any other work out there, right? Uh, I think it's pretty natural to have that. I think it was when I was writing my paper. Yeah, that was when I was at the lowest where I was like, okay, do I really want to do this? Is it worth it? Is it worth going through all of the stress, all
Mm-hmm.
of the, things
Yeah.
that come along with it? But I think uh I learned to push through it just because I'm not saying that, I signed up for it. I think it just phases that sometimes we forget why, and you just have to remember the reasons why you're doing it, right?
Yeah.
And for me it was the same, like why I wanted to do it. Why? Because of my love for science, because I am genuinely interested in figuring things out, the
Mm-hmm.
curiosity behind the actual question, right? And most often than not, when you have these doubts, they're kind of induced more by the environment and not the actual
Mm-hmm.
problem, right? They're
Yeah.
more induced by people, like factors that are more not in your control.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I learned to dissociate. Like, it does not necessarily mean when I'm going through this phase, it's because I'm bad at it, or like, I'm not meant for this. Of course, if I'm here, I can do this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so, how do you feel about the future of science? The maybe the difficulties that we are living maybe now with our generation, and the maybe the future for the next generation.
Yeah. I feel this is a tough question to answer because I feel like I have strong feelings about it in the sense that uh, I think academia is due for a change.
Mm-hmm.
Like we need certain changes to be brought about just because it's working
Yeah.
doesn't mean it's working well, or
Mm-hmm.
it's healthy. So, but like again, like I said, I think maybe that's the naive person in me. Like I want to have hope that it's
Mm-hmm.
going to get better. But yeah, like I think there are a lot of new things with the newer generation that's coming up that we need to change our perspective, right? So I'm hoping with like the newer generation of investigators that are coming in with the newer generation of researchers, we can kind of bring about this change. I'm sure it's going to be slow,
Yeah.
but I have hope. Yeah.
Yeah, and the reason I brought this is we discussed about support our science, which is a pan Canadian movement that is currently happening. I think I don't know when it actually started. Was it officially last year
Yeah,
or
it's been a year. It's been a
okay?
year now. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so yeah, it's what's your opinion on that? Do you think is
No,
it a realistic movement?
of course, I feel like it's such a opportune moment right now to support uh, the changes that people are talking about because I don't know if you've talked about support as science before, but it's
Mm,
a platform where people are like standing for um, better rights, better pay for graduate students
mm-hmm,
because we're living in 2023 3 right now where inflation is so high. But some of the graduate pays haven't changed in 2003, which is almost 20 years,
Yeah.
which I think is unfair for the amount of work, the amount of time that students spend. Uh, I think it all stems down to where students are not technically considered workers because they're still technically students,
Yeah.
uh, like PhD students. I think that's where the gray area comes in. Uh, but then again, it also comes in with this like unspoken culture that we are supposed to put in 40 hours
Mm.
a day without really getting paid
Mm.
minimum wage, which I think is pretty sad because most of the students that I know, at least are in their late 20s, right? And you're at a stage of your life where you want to build your career. And I think at the March, somebody did bring it up. Like we're at a stage where we want to build our career,
Mm-hmm.
and we are working, right? So you have a source of income, but I don't have any security for my future. I'm not really saving any money. I'm not really contributing to my retirement, and I'm turning 30. Like
Yeah.
this is crazy, right? So
Yeah.
I think we need to, like, it needs to be recognized that PhD students and master students are pivotal workers for science society, and they need like more recognition.
Yeah. It's definitely like uh, um, it's a weird place because we're yes students because we're learning to do
Yeah,
science and it's important, but also
we're still working.
it's we're still working because we're yeah we're studying to do something, but most of the time what we're doing is something that is, like we discussed earlier, that is brand new, so it hasn't been explored yet. So it's it's still like yeah working.
Yeah,
So I also agree that we need like better security in the sense that we decided to choose that field because we love it. So regardless of the hours we've put, we should have like a decent salary that
exactly.
should cover all the the hard work we did, the
Yeah, because
advantages. Yeah.
because at the end of the day, yes, I'm working. Yes, this is a choice I made, but I
Mhm.
still need to pay my rent. I still need to have food, and if the inflation is going to keep happening, I need to have a decent pay to
Yeah.
be able to do those things, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So earlier you spoke about faith, and I was like curious to have your opinion about this. Like we can see that you wear a hijab. So
Yeah.
what's your relationship with your religion, faith, and science?
Yeah, I guess like they should come with a disclaimer. These are
Hmm.
all my opinions, and I
Mm.
don't want it to, be like I'm prescribing for certain things.
No, for sure.
Yeah. No, in my personal opinion, I prescribe more to my own personal faith and what I believe in, and don't really care or try to compare to what the other person's idea or what their preconceived notions are about it.
Hmm.
Yeah. And I feel like faith is such a personal thing that you cannot really try to like judge or you know uh pinpoint, and it's
Mm.
like my own personal relationship to what I believe in. And i don't I don't want to ask about like, or I don't want anyone else to uh put their preconceived notions on me
Yeah.
just because I look a certain way.
Mm.
Yeah.
I'm curious. Like once, I don't know if you like do you sometimes cross the paths of other uh, faithful scientists, and like do you feel like some kind of relief that you're not the only one having faith and
I
doing
think it's
something?
nice. Definitely, that it comes down to representation, right? So I feel like representation definitely matters, and like I don't think I've ever like brought up this conversation a lot with other people, but I guess like that's what comes down, right, with people with faith and science. Like everybody's like, oh, how can you do this? Like, how does, like, it's
Yeah.
supposed to be an antithesis? How does that work? I think I'm really good at compartmentalization, and in my brain I can separate out things where I'm pretty rational and I still believe in science, but then at the same time, I know there are certain things that maybe science still doesn't have an answer for. And once it does, maybe I'm going to change my view, you
Mm.
know? So it just comes down to that, like how well you can compartmentalize. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I wanted to jump back to maybe like earlier when we just spoke about med school and you decided to do grad research. How how's your relationship with your parents about this? I it's like a very interesting
Yeah.
question and
I think no, like for sure. I mean, I'm sure, right? Like, I think every Indian parent definitely wants. Sometimes, you know what? Like, I think that also gives me like my imposter syndrome playing the
mm,
devil's advocate. I'm like, okay, am I doing a PhD just to get the doctor title that my parents wanted? Is that it?
mm,
But no, I don't think that's the reason. But yeah, like I said, I think of course my parents would have loved if I were like, a practicing doctor in their
mm,
mind. Because like, okay, so out of all my siblings, I'm the only one who's in biological sciences.
mm,
And the thing with my family is like, even though I do biological sciences, if they have like any medical issue, they'll ask me like, okay, like I have this pain, this work. I'm like, but I don't. You should go to a doctor. That's not what I have. Like that's not what I study.
mm, yeah.
But no, I think my relationship with my parents is still pretty good. I think they're still pretty proud, right?
Mm,
Because at
for
the end
sure.
of the day, I'm still like I like to think they're proud of me. Like
Mm,
I don't know if they are. I hope to believe,
mm,
but we still like. I think my dad has always been a proponent of like
mm,
education. He's like always pushed for us to do like higher education,
yeah.
try to build our own careers, try to build our own identity.
Mm,
And yeah, I think he's pretty proud that
mm.
at least I'm still doing science and I'm going doing like good research, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if you had to live through this stage, but earlier through my PhD, I had to explain to my parents what I'm actually doing in the lab. What's the purpose of this? And like more recently is like, yeah, I'm gonna publish my work soon, and my parents are like, okay, so what? So basically,
Yeah, of
question.
course, right? Like I think to them it's all the buzz keywords, right? Like oh we work with cancer cells or we work with stem
Yeah.
cells. Like that's what they can tell the other people that they know. Oh, like my daughter works with like, in cancer.
Mm,
That's all they know. But yeah, no, they're like in the beginning they were like pretty curious to like figure out. And I think at some point I started working with mice, and then that was like a curiosity for them, like, oh, how
mm,
does it work? Like, how
mm,
does but it's definitely harder for them, but they try in their own little ways. And like you
yeah.
said about the paper too, like when I had my paper too, I remember calling up my dad and being like, oh, it's finally out there, it's got published, and he's like, oh, good job. And then his next question, when's the next one coming? I'm like, uh,
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah. So it's difficult, but I think they still like try.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting to try to explain this field to parents that didn't go through high education, so
Yeah.
they don't exactly know
Yeah.
what we are doing.
No.
Mm. So it's pretty cool. Do you have any other subject we could discuss, Unain? Or
Uh no, I think that was it. I think it's a really good thing that you're doing. I just want to thank you for like having and giving me this opportunity to ramble about myself. Like, who doesn't like talking about themselves?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I wish you all the best. I feel like what you're doing here with like trying to communicate and build a gap with scientists and give them. Also, what I like about this is like the human aspect of it, right? Like we all know each other
Yeah.
at work, and we all know mostly our science and mostly our work that we do, right? But
Hmm.
it's nice to see them as like people outside. Yeah.
That's cool. Thank you,
Yeah.
Unain, for visiting us and supporting the podcast.
Yeah. Thank
And
you.
see you soon, I guess. I don't know if you have social media for your arts, or is it like more
No, I
something?
just do it for a hobby. I just post it on my own account, but I feel like if I do it, I don't want to make it a work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I understand. Like
Yeah.
I had Lara previously, and
Yeah.
we had this discussion.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you.